Most finance professionals use a small slice of what Claude can actually do. So maybe a few prompts, the occasional document summary, then it's straight back to the spreadsheet. But the product underneath that is much, much larger than just a simple chat box. I built a finance system on top of every part of the Claude stack. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 15 features that cover 97% of what Claude can do for finance work. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what each part of the platform does and how to use it for real finance work. If you want the prompts and the data sets from this video, they are in my free community, link in the description. For now, let's get into it. Hack number 1, model selector. The model you choose decides how well Claude handles a finance task. So this is the first thing you have to get right. So I click the model selector at the bottom right and then I pick between 3 options. Haiku is the fastest one and it works well for high volume operational processing. Now if you're scanning a large transaction file for anomalies or maybe summarizing dozens of expense entries, then Haiku gets through it quickly without unnecessary overhead. Sonnet covers most day-to-day finance work like variance commentary, management summaries, and expense breakdowns. Opus is where you go when the analysis gets complex. So for example, multi-period forecasting or anomaly detection across a large data set, or anything that requires reasoning through several layers of financial logic before it answers. There's also an adaptive thinking option inside the selector. So this lets Claude increase its reasoning depth automatically when a task becomes more complex mid-session. Now for a workflow that starts as a report summary but then moves into root cause analysis or strategic forecasting, that escalation happens without you switching models manually. Now once you start using the selector this way, it stops feeling like a chatbot and it starts functioning more like a scalable finance reasoning engine. Hack 2, projects. Next, we have projects, which sits in the left sidebar and it gives Claude a persistent workspace where your context stays loaded across every session. So instead of re-uploading the same report and re-explaining the business each time you open a chat, the project already holds everything Claude needs before you ask the first question. Now, the real value for finance is not storage. It is that Claude reads across every file in the project at once and connects them all together. So you can load quarterly statements or board materials or forecast assumptions and earnings call transcripts. From there, Claude will then basically just reasons over all of them together. So when margin slips in the Q2 actuals, it can tie that to the supply cost comment from the earnings call. Then check it against the forecast assumptions and flag that the forecast still runs on the old cost base. Now that is the kind of link a person only finds by opening 4 files side by side, and you rarely have time to do that. So to set one up, I go to the left sidebar, I click projects, and then I click new project. And I give it a name, add a short instruction for how Claude should operate inside it, and then I upload the relevant financial materials. Now, every task after that starts with the full context already loaded, and the analysis gets deeper as more material goes in over time. Hack 3, Gmail connector. The Gmail connector links your inbox directly into Claude's context. Now, this matters in finance because a significant portion of financial risk first appears in email before it shows up in any report. So think about it. Things like vendor payment disputes or client delays or an approval waiting for sign-off. That information sits scattered across dozens of conversations and usually reaches formal reporting late. So to connect it, I click the plus icon inside the chat box, I open connectors, I search for Gmail, select it, and then click connect. And once it shows up as active, I start a new task with Gmail available in the context. Now I can ask Claude to review the last 7 days of finance-related email and build an executive briefing. And it pulls the liquidity discussions, invoice revisions, vendor payment concerns, and board prep updates. And then it flags the urgent items, the unresolved approvals, and the decision waiting on me. Hack 4, calendar connector. The calendar connector works the same way as Gmail. So I click the plus icon, open connectors, search for Google Calendar, and then connect it. And once active, it's available as context inside any tab. It does something less obvious, but what matters here is workload. In one workflow, Claude analyzed a 2-week finance calendar and identified that close readiness blocks were basically compressed too close to the reporting deadline, and that overlapping treasury meetings were creating approval bottlenecks that would affect the close timeline. So it recommended consolidating 2 recurring treasury syncs and adding a protected review window 3 days before the deadline. So that kind of analysis is simple in principle, but almost never happens manually because no one has the time to audit their own calendar against the reporting schedule while running the close. Hack 5, voice mode. Now we all know that finance professionals tend to think faster than they type, and a lot of the real insight comes out while you're talking a problem through. So voice mode captures it. On the mobile app, I press the microphone in the chat, and I speak naturally and I click send. On desktop, it's the waveform at the bottom of the prompt bar. Say I've just reviewed a P&L and the margin is down. So I talk through it out loud. Revenue is holding, freight costs and overtime labor are eating into EBITDA. And then Claude takes that messy explanation and it turns it into a clean operational memo with the root cause, the leadership priorities for the next quarter, and then in language that a board can read. Hack 6, artifacts. Next up, we have artifacts that let Claude build a live reporting environment from your data right inside the chat. So I connect a data source, say a monthly reporting sheet from Google Drive, and ask for an executive finance dashboard. Then Claude just does the rest. It parses the sheet and decides which metrics matter, and then it builds the whole interface itself. KPI cards for revenue, EBITDA, gross margin, OPEX and cash, forecast versus actual comparisons, profitability trends, and interactive filters, all calculated from the underlying data and rendered in the chat. On a full year 2025 reporting sheet, it produced a dashboard where leadership could filter by segment and period and then review performance directly. And normally, a reporting view like this is manual work. Someone pulls the numbers in Excel, then they rebuild the charts in a BI tool and then formats it for the deck. Here, it goes from a raw sheet to an interactive review environment in a single step. So the time goes into reading the performance and acting on it. Hack 7, interactive visuals. Where artifacts build the dashboard, interactive visuals build the explanation. So finance teams regularly need to explain EBITDA movement or variance drivers and forecast changes to leadership audiences that do not want to read a spreadsheet. So I upload a data set and I ask Claude to visually explain the story behind the numbers, and it generates waterfall charts, margin bridges, and annotated commentary straight from the data. On a 6-month manufacturing data set, it built a bridge showing why EBITDA margin was falling even as revenue grew. Gross margin held steady while freight and overtime steadily consumed profitability, and Claude quantified each driver across the periods. For a board review or a forecast discussion, that turns a spreadsheet into something leadership reads in seconds. Hack 8, Chrome extension. Most modern finance work happens inside browser-based tools. FP&A teams work in Tableau, Power BI, ERP portals, treasury dashboards, and operational KPI systems. The Chrome extension lets Claude inspect those environments and generate structured financial summaries without any manual export or screenshot work. I install Claude for Chrome from the Chrome Web Store, open a dashboard in the browser, activate Claude in Chrome, and then ask it to read the dashboard and prepare the FP&A summary. On a live Tableau dashboard, it worked the way an analyst would. I saw gross margin holding while EBITDA and net margin compressed below the gross profit line, flagged a widening DSO to DPO gap, liquidity pressure and customer concentration risk, and it noted the operating cash flow looked strong but needed validation before anyone tested it as a run rate. Hack 9, Cowork. Cowork moves Claude from analyzing to actually doing. So it runs in a separate desktop app. So I install it, open Cowork from the top left, and toggle on computer use in settings so it can work across all my files. Then I click work in a project and I point it at the folder for a reporting cycle. Now the folder holds the budget, monthly actuals, the forecast, an executive template, and last month's summary. I asked Claude to review everything, to build the updated FP&A package, flag the key variances, and save the outputs back. It worked through all 5 files and produced a reporting workbook with KPI dashboards, variance analysis, liquidity monitoring, and risk sections. It also caught the full year EBITDA was tracking about 31% below budget, driven mostly by gross margin compression. Now that is a reporting cycle run end to end with the finished files saved back where the team works. Hack 10. Scheduled tasks. Scheduled tasks automate recurring finance workflows so they run on a fixed cadence without manual triggering. Now, if a finance process repeats on the same schedule and the structure does not change between runs, then there's no reason to initiate it manually every time. So inside a project, I find the scheduled section on the right, click the plus icon, name the task, write the instructions for the briefing I want, then I choose the frequency and I click save. Now, because it runs inside the project, it already has the context, the connectors, and the files. A daily executive briefing can review the documents, the reports, inbox and calendar every morning, and then surface liquidity concerns or forecast changes and pending approvals before you've even opened a single system. Now the work is waiting then for you as you sit down. Hack 11, dispatch. Dispatch lets you trigger those workflows that you just built from your phone while the execution runs on your main computer. So to use Dispatch, first connect the Claude mobile app with the Claude desktop environment where Cowork is enabled. And once connected, you can send instructions directly from your phone while Claude executes the requested tasks on the linked computer. Now, the work does not stop when I leave my desk. So from my phone, I can tell Claude to find a 6-month P&L in the downloads folder on my computer, or analyze the profitability trend and send me an executive summary. And it runs the analysis on the desktop and the summary comes back to the phone. Now in one case, it pulled a manufacturing P&L, traced the EBITDA deterioration to freight and overtime despite revenue growth, and had the summary ready while I was away from my computer. Hack 12, skills. Next, we have skills, and this is an important one. It is a structured workflow file that Claude loads and follows automatically when a task matches its trigger. So it holds the methodology, the decision rule, the quality checks, and the steps for a specific type of work. So the process runs the same way every time. I install one from the left sidebar under Customize, then Skills, and I browse and install, or I build my own. So there are finance skills for 3 statement models, DCF and LBO valuation, spreadsheet auditing, accrual schedules, variance commentary, and month-end close. For the demo, I used a skill called Clean Data XLS from the financial analysis plugin on a deliberately messy sales file. So instead of writing a long prompt, I invoked the skill. Claude audited the spreadsheet, normalized the data, removed duplicates, fixed the formats, flagged the bad records, and produced a change log of everything it touched. The methodology here is built once and then reused across every reconciliation, model review, and close cycle without re-explaining it. Hack 13, Claude Code. Now, Claude Code lets you build software by describing it in plain English. So for finance, that shift is bigger than it actually sounds. Now, the normal path to a custom tool is writing a requirements document, then handing it to an engineering team, and then waiting through a build cycle. Claude Code removes that path. So you describe the system that you want, and it builds directly from your finance files, which moves you from requesting software to actually designing it. Now, this matters because finance teams build spreadsheets and models that outgrow Excel, but rarely have engineers to turn them into proper applications. So with Claude Code, you can build the purpose-built systems Excel can't hold. In the demo, I pointed Claude Code at the FP&A workspace from earlier, and I asked for a browser-based executive platform. It read every workbook, extracted the data, built the data models, the interface, and the calculations, and then it launched it locally. The result had 7 working modules covering everything from variance analysis and forecast tracking to cash and liquidity monitoring and scenario planning. And every figure was pulled live from the source file so the system stays tied to the underlying data. None of it required writing any code by hand. Hack 14, Claude Design. Claude Design is a visual workspace inside the Claude web application where you can build slide decks or dashboards or one-pagers and reporting templates using natural language. So I go to Claude Design, I describe what I want, and I use the slide deck workflow, which is the most useful area for finance. I gave it a quarterly business review package for a company called Horizon Industrial Group. It read the report, asked about audience, length, and what the board needed to see. Then it built the deck and reviewed its own layouts, spacing, and charts as it went. Now the output was a 10-slide executive deck with KPI dashboards, revenue bridges, variance analysis, liquidity summaries, and recommendations. Now most finance professionals are not designers, and this is the step that closes the gap between finished analysis and the presentation leadership can actually act on. Now, the prerequisite for using all of these hacks is that you are using Claude in the first place. Now, if you already use another AI tool for finance, you can bring that context across instead of rebuilding it by using memory import. So I open settings, I go to capabilities, and I find import memory from other AI providers. Click start import. Claude then generates a prompt and I paste it into ChatGPT, copy the response back, drop it into the import box, and then I click add to memory. Now for finance professionals who have been using ChatGPT regularly, this means Claude can immediately pick up your reporting preferences, your KPI definitions, your preferred writing style, and recurring finance instructions without you rebuilding that context from scratch. And that's it, that's the full set. 15 ways to use Claude across finance, from picking the right model and loading your business context, to monitoring your inbox and calendar, automating the reporting, executing full cycles across your files, and turning the output into board decks. Now, if you want the prompts and the data sets from this video, they're in the free community, which is linked in the description below. And I'll see you in the next one.